The desert stretched like a sea of pale gold under the blazing sun. Wind carried fine grains of sand across the dunes, covering and uncovering small rocks as if the land itself was breathing. In this endless emptiness, a group of human explorers moved slowly, their machines crawling beside them like patient beasts of burden. They had been sent to this distant planet to study old ruins rumored to exist beneath the desert floor. Mira walked at the front of the group. She was not the strongest among them, nor the fastest, but she was the one who always watched carefully. Her eyes scanned every rise and slope, searching for patterns in the shifting land. For weeks she had studied fragments of stone found near the desert's edge. Strange carvings told of something hidden below. To many in the colony, the stories were nothing more than local legends. To Mira, the shapes in the stone whispered truth. Behind her, Thomas adjusted the heavy scanner on his back. His machine hummed as it sent waves into the ground. He frowned as numbers flickered across the screen. "There is something large here," he said in a steady voice. "The readings suggest walls, maybe even a structure." The others gathered around to look. They were 6 in total, each with different skills. Mira was the researcher, Thomas the technician, Iron the pilot who had landed their craft, Nali the linguist who studied alien signs, Rin the medic, and Darun the digger who never trusted machines but trusted his shovel more. Darun lifted his shovel and stabbed it into the sand. "Then let us see what waits below. No point in standing in the heat while our machines blink and buzz." The group laughed lightly at his impatience, but Mira did not. Her gaze remained on the horizon. She felt the desert was not silent. It seemed to hold its breath. Hours turned to days as the team worked. They cleared sand, drilled supports, and marked safe paths. At last, the sand gave way to stone. A surface appeared, smooth and gleaming faintly even under layers of dust. It was not common rock. It had been shaped with skill. When the sun dipped low and the desert sky turned red, the explorers gathered before what they now knew was a door. It was vast, rising taller than 3 men, and it was not dull stone. The surface shone like metal, but richer as though it carried the glow of the setting sun within itself. Mira brushed her hand across it, feeling warmth that was not from the desert heat. "It is gold," whispered Nali. Her voice trembled with awe. Not simple gold, but something purer, forged in a way beyond what we know. The others stared. The door had markings carved across it. Some were straight lines, others curved like rivers, yet together they formed patterns that seemed alive. When the wind blew, the lines caught the light as if they moved. That night the explorers set their camp near the golden door. They ate in silence, each lost in thought. Iron broke the silence first. "Do you hear it? When the wind strikes the stone, it is like a drum, as if the door itself answers the desert." Darun shook his head. "Old stones often sing. Nothing strange in that." Yet even his words carried less strength than before. Mira sat close to the door, her notebook open. She traced the patterns with her pen. Something about the carvings pulled her in. They did not seem like decoration. They seemed like instruction. As the stars came out, a storm gathered on the horizon. The desert sky darkened with thick clouds. Lightning flashed, bright and sudden, lighting the door in silver-white bursts. With every strike, the golden surface seemed to glow stronger, as if it drank the storm's power. The ground shook with thunder, and the explorers stepped back in alarm. "The door," whispered Thomas, his voice low. "It reacts." Rain never fell in this part of the desert, but that night the air carried the taste of water. The storm moved closer, its voice booming across the dunes. Lightning struck the sands not far away, and for an instant the carvings on the door shone with sharp brilliance like veins of fire. Mira's heart beat fast. She knew at that moment that this was not just a tomb. It was a machine, built with purpose, waiting for the right moment or the right touch. She looked at her team. Some were afraid, some were eager, but all of them knew they stood at the edge of a discovery greater than any in their lives. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sky was clean blue and the desert calm once more. But the door still carried a faint glow as if the storm had left its memory upon the surface. The explorers gathered again. Darren leaned on his shovel and spoke firmly. "We came here to uncover secrets. We cannot walk away now. We open it." Rin, the medic, frowned. "And if it was sealed for a reason? If what lies behind it was never meant to be touched again?" Mira looked at the door, then at her team. She felt the weight of the moment. Legends from the colonists echoed in her mind. They had spoken of a tomb that shook when disturbed, a resting place of powers best left in silence. But Mira's spirit was not one that could walk away from truth. "We are here," she said. "The door called to us with thunder. It would not wake if we were not meant to find it. We must open it, but we must do it with respect." Her calm tone steadied the group. Even Rin lowered his protest. They began to prepare their tools. Thomas set charges designed to break stone without destroying what lay behind it. Darun placed his hands on the golden surface one last time, muttering a quiet word as though asking forgiveness. Nali copied the carvings, filling her pages with their designs, hoping they would reveal their meaning later. As they worked, Mira kept her eyes on the horizon. She felt the desert was still watching them. She could not shake the thought that something greater than wind and sand waited for their choice. The sun rose higher, and the golden door shone bright enough to blind. When the team stood ready, Thomas gave the signal. The charges were placed not to break but to shift the mechanism hidden within. The group stepped back, holding their breath. The sound came first, a low rumble deep in the earth. The sand beneath their feet trembled. Then, with a crack that rolled across the desert like thunder, the golden door began to move. It did not fall. It did not break. It slid slowly, as if pushed by invisible hands. Light spilled from the widening gap, not sunlight but a glow from within. The air grew heavy, filled with a sharp metallic scent. The explorers stood frozen, their hearts pounding. They had opened the door. The tomb was awake. The golden door stood wide enough for the explorers to enter, yet none moved at first. A deep silence wrapped around them. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if the desert itself held its breath. From inside the opening came a glow that was neither fire nor sunlight. It shimmered like liquid gold, and it pulsed in rhythm, like the slow beat of a heart. Mira stepped forward. She carried no weapon, only a small lantern, though the light from within made it almost unnecessary. Her eyes were steady, though her hands felt cold. Behind her, Thomas adjusted his scanner and muttered numbers under his breath. "The energy is high," he said. "Too high for a place sealed this long. It should be dark and dead, but something is alive in there." Darun frowned, gripping his shovel as though it were a blade. "Alive in what way? Do you mean machines or something else?" Thomas shook his head. "I cannot tell. The readings are unlike anything I know." Nali, the linguist, placed her hand against the carved symbols near the door. "These patterns speak of guardians," she whispered. "Not guards of flesh, but guards of silence. Whoever built this tomb wanted to protect what was inside, not from thieves alone, but from time itself." Rin the medic gave a short laugh, though unease filled his voice. "Then perhaps we should leave it to its silence," but Mira did not step back. She lifted her lantern and crossed the threshold. The glow washed across her face, and her shadow stretched long behind her. Slowly, the others followed. The air inside was different from the desert outside. It was cooler, sharp, and filled with a metallic taste that clung to the tongue. Their boots touched stone that shone like polished glass, smooth yet firm. The walls rose high, curving upward into darkness, yet threads of light ran along them, weaving into patterns that shifted when watched too long. The first chamber opened wide, larger than the colony's meeting hall. Pillars of strange metal reached toward the ceiling, glowing faintly along their edges. Between them, carvings stretched across the walls. They were not simple marks. They were murals, great images carved with precision, telling a story in silence. Nali stepped closer, her fingers tracing the shapes. "Look," she said, her voice echoing. "These figures are human." The group froze. On the wall, carved among alien stars, stood figures with faces and bodies like their own. They were drawn beside beings with long limbs and shining eyes, creatures not known in any history of Earth or the colonies. Together they raised symbols of light as if allies. "But how?" whispered Rin. "This tomb is older than any human travel beyond Earth. How could they be here?" No one answered. The silence of the tomb pressed heavier than words. They moved deeper. Corridors branched in many directions, but light guided them toward one path. Every step made the ground hum, a low vibration that grew stronger as they advanced. Thomas's scanner blinked wildly, unable to give sense to the waves it read. At the second chamber, they found something stranger still. Statues lined the walls. At first, they seemed to be stone figures, tall and robed, with faces hidden under smooth masks. Yet when Mira drew near, she saw lines across their bodies that looked like joints. These were not statues. They were machines built in the shape of guardians. Darun lifted his shovel in instinct. "These things will move," he said firmly. "Mark my words." Nolly touched one carefully. It was cold, but beneath the surface she felt a faint thrum as though energy still rested in its heart. "They sleep," she said softly. "But they are not gone." Mira's gaze lingered on the guardians. She felt they were watching even in stillness. A warning pressed against her mind, though no words were spoken. She pulled her team forward before fear could take hold. The third chamber was narrower, with a floor covered in strange lines that glowed faintly under their boots. The air grew warmer. The hum of the place rose until it sounded like distant thunder. Mira raised her lantern higher, though the walls themselves shone enough to see. At the far end of the corridor stood a door smaller than the first, but darker, made of metal black as night. Around it were carvings of storms, lightning striking a golden gate, thunder rolling across sand. Mira understood then why the colonists had spoken of thunder and door in their legends. This tomb was not only a resting place, it was a memory carved in stone, warning and calling both at once. Thomas adjusted his scanner and frowned. "This door is locked by power, not by weight. There is a field across it. If we push, it will resist. Then how do we open it?" asked Rin. Thomas looked uncertain. "Perhaps it requires a signal, or perhaps the storm outside already started its awakening. Whatever it is, we are standing in something that should not exist." Darren stepped closer and pressed his hand against the black metal. At once the ground shook. A low rumble filled the corridor, rolling through their bones. The statues in the second chamber stirred faintly, as though shifting in their sleep. The explorers leapt back. Darun swore under his breath. "I told you they would move." But Mira's eyes were fixed on the black door. The carvings around it glowed brighter, lines of lightning crawling across their shapes. She realized that the tomb was alive. It did not simply exist. It listened, it watched, and it judged. She turned to her team. "We cannot treat this place as treasure to take. We must treat it as a voice, a message left for us. If we open the black door in greed, we may wake something that will not forgive us." The group hesitated. Each of them felt the weight of her words. Even Darun, stubborn and fearless, lowered his shovel. They moved back to the first chamber, setting their camp inside the tomb itself. The glow lit the space without need for fire. As they rested, Mira studied the murals again. She saw humans raising their hands to the sky, standing beside the masked guardians, facing storms that stretched across the stars. She traced the lines with her pen, copying them into her notebook. Nolly joined her. "Do you see it?" she asked. "This is not only history, it is warning. The humans of old closed the door because what lay beyond it was too great to be left free." Mira nodded. "And yet they left a path, a way to open it again. Perhaps they hoped that one day when humans returned, we would be wiser." The desert outside roared with thunder once more. Lightning lit the sky, though no rain fell. The tomb trembled as if answering. The golden door behind them glowed again, brighter than before, sealing them inside with its radiance. Rin rose in alarm. "The door. It closes." Thomas checked the mechanism, his face pale. "It is not closing to trap us. It is sealing because we are now part of its test. We entered. Now it decides what we are." Mira placed her hand on the mural and spoke softly, as if to the guardians carved in stone. "We came to learn, not to steal. If you judge us by our search for knowledge." The ground shook harder. From the second chamber came the sound of stone cracking, joints moving and metal grinding. The guardians were no longer asleep. Their heads turned and the glow of their eyes flickered alive. The explorers stood together, fear and awe filling their hearts. They had opened the tomb. Now the tomb was opening them. The sound of stone and metal filled the tomb as the statues in the second chamber began to move. At first it was only the smallest motion, the shift of a head, the rise of a hand, but then joints cracked open, dust falling from ancient seams, and tall forms stepped free from the walls where they had stood for countless ages. Their masks shone faintly with blue light, their eyes burning like cold stars. The explorers gathered close to one another. Mira stood at the front, her heart beating fast but her face calm. She knew that fear would only make things worse. "There are 6 of them," Tomas whispered, his scanner shaking in his hand. "Each one is active. Energy levels rising fast. I cannot read their core. They are beyond my machine." Darun lifted his shovel again, but Mira put her hand on his arm. "No," she said firmly. "Do not show anger. They will not understand our tools as weapons of defense. They will see attack. We must show them respect. The guardians moved with slow steps, their heavy feet echoing across the stone floor. They formed a circle around the explorers, not striking, not raising weapons, only watching. Their blue eyes shifted from one human to another, studying faces, scanning movements. Then one of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward. Its mask had more lines, more marks, as if it carried rank among its kind. The air vibrated when it raised its hand, and a strange sound filled the chamber. At first it was broken noise, like static from a broken communicator. Then slowly the sound shaped into words. "Why do you return?" The explorers froze. The voice was deep, metallic, yet within it lay an echo of something human. The words were rough, imperfect, but clear enough to understand. Nali, the linguist, stepped forward slightly. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "We did not know this place. We came searching for history. We are explorers. We are not your enemies." The guardian tilted its head. Its glowing eyes narrowed. "You are human, again." After long silence, Mira's chest tightened. The murals on the walls, the images of humans beside these beings, came rushing into her mind. "You know us," she said softly. The guardian's voice grew stronger. "Once, long ago, humans walked beside us. They stood in council. They fought storms. But then they vanished. The alliance broke. Memory faded." The explorers looked at one another in shock. This was history no book carried, no colony recorded. To think that humans had walked among the stars long before this age was more than they could imagine. Darun's voice was rough with disbelief. "That cannot be. Humans only reached the stars in recent centuries. How could it be longer?" The guardian's mask tilted again. "Time is not as you count. Records can be sealed. Memory can be broken. But stone remembers. We remember." Nali's hand brushed her notebook. The murals were not stories. They were truth. Another guardian stepped forward, its voice sharper. "If you are human, then you must be tested. Long ago, humans chose to seal this place. They feared the power behind the black door. They promised no one would open it until wisdom was greater than hunger. Are you that wisdom?" Mira raised her head, meeting the glowing eyes without fear. "We do not come for treasure. We come for knowledge. Judge us on that." The guardians turned their heads toward one another. For a long moment, no sound was heard but the hum of the tomb. Then the leader spoke again. "You will face trial. If you fail, you will remain here as dust among the forgotten. If you succeed, the way forward will open." The explorers exchanged uneasy glances. Rin the medic whispered, "This is madness. How can we be judged by machines built before our birth?" But Mira's voice was calm. "They are not simply machines. They are keepers of a promise. If humans built this seal, then humans must face what they left behind. We cannot run." The guardians raised their hands. The ground beneath the explorers shifted, lines of light racing outward. The floor itself began to move, dividing into paths that stretched in different directions. "The tomb will test you," said the leader. "Body, mind, and spirit. You must walk together. If you break, you fail." The explorers had no choice. The path before them glowed brighter, pulling them forward. With Mira at the front, they stepped onto the moving floor. Behind them, the guardians watched, their blue eyes unblinking. The path carried them into a new chamber unlike any they had seen. The walls shimmered with shifting patterns of light. The floor was a puzzle of tiles, each glowing with a different color. When Mira stepped onto the first tile, the glow beneath her feet spread outward like ripples across water. Nali bent to study the patterns. "It is a code," she said. "A language of steps. If we move wrongly, the path may collapse," Darun groaned. "So it is a game of colors now? We could die on a child's puzzle." "Not a game," Mira said. "A test. If humans are to walk with them again, we must show patience and reason." Together they worked, Nali reading the symbols, Thomas checking the energy with his scanner, Mira guiding each step. Slowly they crossed the chamber, choosing each tile with care. At one point, Darun almost rushed forward, but Mira held him back just in time as a red tile flashed and sank into darkness. His face went pale. He said no more. At last they reached the other side. The wall opened with a low hum, and they stepped into the next trial. This chamber was darker, filled with mirrors that stretched from floor to ceiling. When the explorers entered, their reflections multiplied, surrounding them in every direction. But the reflections were not still. They moved differently, sometimes delayed, sometimes too fast, sometimes with expressions twisted in anger or fear. Rin whispered, "It is us, but not us." Mira placed her hand on the glass. Her reflection did the same, but its eyes glowed blue like the Guardian's. She understood then. This is the spirit trial. It shows what we may become: greed, anger, weakness. We must face ourselves. The reflections began to step out of the mirrors, forming solid shapes. Soon the explorers faced dark versions of themselves, each holding their own flaws. Darun faced his own image, wielding the shovel like a weapon, its eyes filled with hunger for power. Rin faced his reflection, trembling in fear, always doubting, always ready to run. Mira stood before her own double. It looked calm like her, but its eyes were cold. It spoke with her voice. You lead but for pride. You say knowledge, but you seek glory. For a moment Mira's heart wavered, but then she spoke firmly. No. I lead because I must, because truth is greater than pride. I seek not glory, but understanding. If I am wrong, then judge me now. Her reflection flickered, then vanished back into the mirror. The others fought their own inner shadows. Darun struggled, but Mira called to him. You are more than your anger. You are strength when used with care, he shouted, and his reflection shattered like glass. Rin whispered to his trembling double. I am afraid, but I will not let fear guide me. His reflection bowed its head and faded, one by one. The explorers faced themselves and triumphed. The mirrors cracked, falling away to reveal the next passage. At the far end of the path, the Guardians waited. Their eyes glowed brighter. The leader spoke again. You have begun the trial. You faced puzzles of mind and shadows of spirit. Yet one test remains, the test of heart. Only then will the black door open. The explorers, tired but steady, stood together. Mira placed her hand on her chest, breathing deep. We will face it, she said. Together. The Guardians raised their arms and the tomb shook again with thunder. Somewhere deep inside, the black door pulsed with light, waiting for the final judgment. The chamber grew silent after the mirrors shattered. The explorers stood close together, their breathing heavy, their faces pale from what they had faced. Yet there was also strength in their eyes. They had seen their own shadows and they had not turned away. The Guardians watched in silence, their blue eyes glowing. Then the leader raised its hand and spoke again in its deep, broken voice. Mind tested, spirit tested, heart remains. Without heart, wisdom fails. Without heart, strength becomes ruin. Mira felt the words sink deep into her chest. She turned to her companions. This is the last trial. We have to face it as one. If even one of us breaks, we all fail. The ground beneath them trembled. The chamber opened into a wide circular hall. The walls glowed with golden lines that stretched upward like roots of a great tree. At the center of the hall was a stone platform. Upon it rested a sphere of light, bright and pulsing like a living sun held within crystal. The Guardians did not follow. Instead, their voices echoed from the chamber walls. The sphere holds choice. It shows the past and the future. It shows what you are and what you may be. To touch it is to reveal your heart. The explorers moved forward slowly. The sphere cast warm light across their faces, and each of them felt its pull. Mira could almost hear a faint whisper, calling her by name, offering promises she could not understand. Darun stepped closer first. His hands shook. It is power, he said in a low voice. I feel it. I could lift mountains with this. With such strength, no enemy could stand against us. Mira placed her hand on his arm. That is not what it asks of you. The trial is not about power. It is about what you choose when offered power. Darun pulled back, sweat shining on his face. He did not touch the sphere. Next, Nali approached. The light reflected in her eyes, and she whispered, It speaks of language. I see symbols, voices of stars. If I take this, I could learn every tongue, every secret, knowledge without end. But she too stepped back, her face torn between longing and fear. It would not be wisdom, she admitted softly. It would be greed for knowing all. Thomas came forward then. He raised his scanner, but the device blinked out and failed in the sphere's glow. His eyes widened. It destroys machines. Yet it offers me understanding beyond machines. I could see the structure of the universe itself. I could master science with a glance. He stared at it for a long time, but at last lowered his hand. If I take it, I lose myself. I will not, Rin stepped forward unwillingly. He was the one who had doubted most, the one who wished to turn back. But as the light fell on him, his face changed. It shows me peace, he whispered. It shows me safety, no danger, no fear. If I touch it, I can end all pain. I would never be afraid again. Mira walked to him and shook her head gently. Fear is part of us. Without it, courage is nothing. You are brave because you feel fear and keep walking. Do not trade that away. Rin closed his eyes and stepped back, trembling but free. At last, only Mira remained. She stood before the sphere alone. The light surrounded her, wrapping her in warmth that felt like arms. Voices spoke within her, soft and kind. They promised her truth. Knowledge of the tomb, knowledge of humanity's lost history. All of it in a single touch. She saw herself standing before the colonies, raising the sphere as proof of greatness. She saw her name remembered in every star. Her heart ached at the vision. She wanted it. She wanted to know everything, to answer every question that had burned in her since childhood. But then she remembered the murals, the guardians, and the words of the trial. It was not about what she wanted. It was about what humanity needed. And humanity did not need one person with all answers. It needed people who chose to seek answers together. Mira reached out not to take the sphere, but to rest her hand gently on its light. She spoke aloud, her voice clear. I do not seek power. I do not seek endless knowledge. I do not seek freedom from fear. I seek only the chance to learn step by step with my people, with respect for those who came before. If you judge us on this choice. The light flared so bright that the others covered their eyes. The chamber shook as thunder rolled through the stone. The sphere lifted into the air and dissolved into countless golden sparks, which swirled around the explorers like stars before fading into the walls. The voice of the guardian filled the hall. Heart tested. Choice made. The tomb accepts. The path will open. The black door they had seen before rumbled from deep within the tomb. The sound was like a mountain cracking apart. Lightning-like light spread across its carvings, bright enough to pierce the desert above. The explorers ran back through the corridors as the tomb shifted. The guardians stood awake, their eyes glowing brighter than before. They did not move to stop the humans. Instead, they bowed their masked heads. The leader spoke. You have chosen humility over hunger. You have shown respect over greed. You are the heirs of those who sealed this place. The black door will now open for you. The explorers stood in awe. Even Darun lowered his head, humbled by the weight of the words. Mira stepped forward. We are ready. Whatever lies beyond, we will face it with care. The guardians stepped aside. The path to the black door was open. The carvings flashed with golden light as the heavy slabs began to shift. The sound was thunder once more, rolling through the desert above. The explorers stood together, their faces lit by the glow, knowing that the greatest discovery of their lives waited just beyond. As the black door cracked open, a rush of air poured out, cool and filled with the scent of metal and stone untouched for ages. Beyond the threshold was a golden chamber that shone with light not of this world. At its center stood rows of tall pillars covered in symbols, and between them floated objects that glimmered like stars. Mira felt her breath catch in her throat. She knew at once this was no simple tomb. It was a vault, a library, a place where memory itself had been stored. The guardians' voices echoed one last time. Enter, children of Earth. Take what you need, but remember the promise. Knowledge is gift and burden. Guard it well. The explorers stepped forward as one, their shadows stretching long in the radiant light of the chamber. The golden door opened wider, thunder rolling as if the sky itself bore witness. They had passed the trial. They had chosen with heart. Now they would uncover the truth left behind by the first humans who had walked among the stars. The golden chamber stretched before the explorers like a dream. Pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in brilliant light. Each pillar was covered in carvings, symbols of stars, planets, and humans who had walked among them long before the colonies had even sent ships into space. Between the pillars floated objects that shimmered, suspended as if by invisible hands. They glowed softly, casting patterns across the walls. Mira stepped forward first. Her hand brushed the nearest pillar and the carvings seemed to respond. Lines of light shifted along the surface, connecting stars and symbols in a story that was older than any human memory. Tomas approached, his scanner useless but his eyes wide with awe. No machine I have will explain this. It is knowledge itself, alive. Nali moved carefully, her hands tracing the symbols. These are histories, she whispered. Records of humans who traveled before us, who stood with others in the galaxy. They worked to protect the future. And then they hid this place. They left it so only those worthy could find it again. Darun remained silent, his usual rough voice gone. I thought we would find treasure, he muttered.
But this...
This is greater than gold. This is life itself saved from time. Rin looked around, still uneasy but inspired. It is responsibility, he said softly. We cannot take it lightly. What lies here is meant to guide, not rule. Mira stepped to the center of the chamber. The light seemed to respond to her presence, flowing toward her in ribbons of gold. She felt the pulse of the tomb as though it were alive, as though it were watching to see what they would do next. A pillar spoke, not in words but in images projected in light. Scenes appeared showing humans walking among alien civilizations, teaching, learning, exploring. They built cities of light and knowledge, alliances of trust and curiosity. Yet the images also showed humans making mistakes, greed taking hold, conflicts that spread, and the choice to seal knowledge away to prevent destruction. Mira felt tears prick at her eyes. They trusted us to be better, she whispered. They left this for us to find only if we could choose wisely. The guardians stepped forward, their forms glowing brighter than ever. The leader spoke. You have shown heart, spirit, and mind. You have not taken for yourselves. You are ready to learn what humans once knew. But remember, knowledge is not gift alone. It is burden. Use it with care. The explorers nodded solemnly. Each of them understood the weight of what they had earned. Thomas approached a floating object that looked like a star map. As he touched it, constellations shifted, revealing routes through the galaxy that had been lost for centuries. These are travel paths, he said in wonder. Routes humans once took. We could follow them, explore places no one has seen in 1,000 years. Nali studied a pillar with symbols of language. These are words of countless civilizations, she said. If we learn them, we could speak to others across the stars, understand histories we never knew existed. Darren found tools and devices, small enough to carry but shining with unknown energy. These are machines, he said. Not weapons, but builders. They could help us create, repair, and learn at speeds we cannot imagine. Rin approached a sphere that contained a scene of humans standing before alien leaders, discussing treaties and peace. It is not only knowledge, he said. It is the way we should act. We are meant to learn how to walk among others, not dominate them. Mira reached for the final pillar. Images of the past humans showed that they faced dangers even greater than these explorers could imagine. Yet they chose to act with caution, respect, and patience. The carvings seemed to say one thing clearly. Humans must rise not by strength alone, but by wisdom, cooperation, and heart. The explorers gathered in the center, holding a silent conversation in their minds. They understood now that this place was not a tomb, nor merely a library. It was a test, a gift, and a guide. It had waited for centuries to see if humanity could rise to the level of trust once granted to their ancestors. The guardians stepped back, letting the explorers move freely. Their voices echoed once more. You may take knowledge. You may learn, but do not carry pride. Let it guide humanity, not destroy it. Remember the lessons of those who came before. Mira turned to her companions. We cannot take everything at once, she said. We must record it, study it, and share it carefully. This is not a prize. It is responsibility. The team nodded in agreement. They spent hours exploring the chamber. They touched symbols that showed stellar maps, recipes for energy sources, devices to heal and build, and stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen. Each object, each pillar gave insight without demand. None of them felt temptation to take more than they could understand. They listened, watched, and recorded everything. When the work was done, the guardians approached again. The leader spoke softly. You have chosen well. Knowledge is given and your hearts remain true. Remember this day, for it is not the end. It is the beginning. Go into the universe and let humanity rise with wisdom, not with hunger. Let your people know patience, respect, and courage. The explorers bowed. Mira whispered a quiet thanks, not for herself, but for all humans who had walked before and for the chance to learn from them. The tomb began to shift once more. The golden chamber's light softened, and the black door behind them slowly sealed itself. The sound was not frightening but final, like a promise kept. The guardians returned to their positions along the walls, their eyes dimming, yet still glowing faintly as watchers of the vault. The explorers walked back through the corridors, their minds full of what they had seen. Each step felt lighter than before. They had passed every test, learned every lesson the tomb had offered, and survived with hearts unbroken. Outside, The desert had returned to calm. The storm that had heralded their first discovery had faded. The golden door now rested in silence, gleaming faintly under the sun. Thunder still rolled softly in the distance, a reminder that the tomb had heard them and accepted them. Mira looked at her companions. "We have a duty now," she said. "To our colonies, to humanity, and to those who came before. We will share what we can, but carefully. We will teach, not conquer. We will build, not destroy. This is what the tomb asked of us," Darun nodded, "and we will remember that every choice matters. What we do with this knowledge shapes the future." Nali smiled faintly. "We are not just explorers anymore. We are guardians of memory." Thomas adjusted his scanner, though he knew it could not measure the gift they had been given. "We have the tools and wisdom to reach farther than ever before, but we must walk carefully. One mistake could undo all of this." Rin added quietly, "We have seen the past and glimpsed the future. The question is, will we rise to it?" Mira looked at the golden door, now closed but still radiant. "We will. Together. Humanity has the chance to become more than it ever knew. We must honor that chance." The explorers returned to their camp near the desert, knowing their lives had changed forever. They had faced the tomb, passed its trials, and learned its secrets. They had seen the truth of human history and the responsibility that knowledge carried. Above them, the sky was clear. The sun rose higher, painting the sands gold. The tomb lay behind them, silent, waiting for the next moment humanity proved itself worthy again. The desert no longer felt empty. It was alive with memory, wisdom, and the promise of the future. The explorers looked to the horizon, each feeling the weight of what they had seen. They had discovered more than a tomb. They had discovered themselves, the true potential of humanity, and the responsibility to rise with courage, heart, and wisdom. And with that, they stepped forward into the bright morning, ready to return to their colonies, ready to share what they could, and ready to let humanity walk again among the stars with honor. The golden door remained closed, but the thunder had passed. The tomb had spoken and humanity had listened.